Hello, and welcome to this brief tutorial video on how to utilize the SQL Data Grid object within App Server to connect to an external third-party database. Now, for this particular demonstration, we'll be using App Server 2017 Update 2. Now, to begin with, let's first open up our IDE. And within our IDE, let's locate a derived template that we utilize to connect to the external database. In this case, I have one called master underscore SQL data. So this is our object. So we're going to right click and we're going to create a new instance. We recreated our instance and it has the red X, so that just tells us that we need to configure the object. So I'm going to open it up in the object editor. And under the database tab, we'll go ahead and connect to our database. In this case, our database is running locally, so I'm just going to put localhost. Now, in the real world, you would put the database name of the database server that's somewhere on your network. If it's local, you could also use localhost. I'm going to hit this down arrow. This will tell us if we were successful in connecting to the database server. I have a listing of databases to choose from, and I'm going to use this demo database called AdventureWorks 2012. And I'm going to select a table. So I'll go ahead and select a table. In this case, I'm just going to say production product. And test the connection. Everything seems to be good. Okay, say OK, and move on to database or to the design tab. Now, we can either type in information manually by clicking on this add button, or we just simply get the information from the database. So I'll just click on that, and by clicking on it, it now populates the screen with all of the available fields or columns and column information that's related to that particular table. Now, with this right here, we also get the ability to assign an attribute to various fields within our table. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to simply highlight the first column here, which is class, and I'm going to select it up here, and I'm going to create attributes that are associated with each element that I want to get from that database. So in this case, I'll just say I'll paste it for class. Let's go back and find out what it is. It's called a string, or its data type is a string, and I'll select data type here as string as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to create the additional attributes. Okay, I've taken the time to add all of my attributes, and I just want you to take note of the fact that all of my attributes that I have created, they match, or I chose to match them to the items that I expect to get from my database. Everything from class, discontinued date, and so forth. And if you look, I have the exact same match, and not only that, but they also reflect the data types that I expect to get from the database as well. When we go to the data sheet, we can do a refresh, and this will query the database to give us information, a lot more information. From the database. It's essentially a database query, the same as you would get from SQL Management Studio, if you're familiar with that. Now, I can also refine my query to say, for instance, let's say all I want is everything dealing with the color black. So I say color equals black, and do a refresh, and I get everything with the color black. So this is a diagnostic or a test query, and you can also use this particular statement for the runtime query to further refine your database query information. Now, once I've done that, I'll just get rid of that filter or that query, and I'll just save and close. And I will rename this, and let's see, I'll just call it production, and I believe production. That's from the from this particular table, and this is the information that I expect to get. So I just simply made it reflect what the table that I'm getting, what I'm getting from the table. So production, actually product. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm just going to, let's see, close this and just simply rename it to be a little more appropriate. Now it doesn't, in renaming this, it doesn't take a dot, so I have to put an underscore. So at this point now, I'm just simply going to deploy it. And so once it's deployed, I can now go to Object Viewer and check on and see if I can get data. I'll just open it up in Object Viewer, and as you can see, I have information. So in order to test this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, like, say for instance, this is location and this is product. This is what I just created. So this is the information that I can pull from that particular database. So let me pull some information. I'll add it to the watch window. And one of the other things that I want to pull, add to the watch window is there is an attribute that will actually command the object to query the database. So this is the information that I expect to pull from the database. And so these are the attributes that I created, and so I'm going to execute this command. It's DB, meaning database, so database to attribute. So take information means take information from the database and store it in the attribute. So I'm going to say true, and once it executes, then the attributes, if there was data in that particular database, or those particular columns, then it would actually show. Now, I also have another one that I created earlier that actually has information. So I'm going to open up a watch window that I created earlier. Okay, I've opened up my little watch window, and this one here is called production location. Essentially, this is this object here. They're both the same type. It's pulling different information from the database. To kind of give you a visual on that, just imagine here, this is my database, AdventureWorks 2012, and if you look here, I have my database, my tables that are associated with my database. In this case, production location. And if I look at the top 200 rows, here's my query. And let's see here, see if I can edit that a little better. Edit. Okay, and so this is the information that I would expect to see. So let's head back to Object Viewer, and I'm going to execute my command. Now I'm going to get rid of my little query string, and I'm going to execute that command. And notice that the information that I'm going to get, the name, went to tool crib. And if we go back here, that's the first element, or the location ID, the first index or first element in my my columns here. So this is as tool crib. But let's say, for instance, I want to get frame welding, which actually has some information. So what I would do is I would come here and I would execute a query string, excuse me. So what it is I will say location ID equals 20, and then I'll execute that command. And now it's changed. So that concludes this brief tutorial video on how to utilize the SQL Data Grid to get data from an external Microsoft SQL Server database. Thank you.